Welcome, David.
Hello.
David is going to be one of 53 authors at the Festival of Books and Creativity that's taking place at the end of June in Novi, Michigan. And we're going to talk today about David's books. Can you please share with us what books you have written?
Yes, I have a series, and the series is called The Lords of Twin Earth. And the first book in that series is entitled The Axe and Helms.
Okay.
And the sequel to that book is, well, got to find the camera here, is The Wayward King.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm currently working on the third book in the series. I don't have the book cover yet. My
Mm-hmm.
artist is still working on that, but it's called Destiny or Decision.
And tell us, what are those books about?
So it's kind of hard to pigeonhole a genre because I kind of colored outside the lines when it came to
Perfect.
that. Technically, it's a science fiction novel,
Mm-hmm.
but there's also a historic fiction component to it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of mystery to it,
Oh.
and it's written with kind of a fantasy flair.
Oh.
So the general premise of the story is there is this place called Twin Earth, which is Old English for Earth's twin,
Mm-hmm.
and people, groups, uh, most especially armies, military groups from all over the world, from throughout time, different cultures have been pulled into this Twin Earth land.
Mm-hmm.
And our main character, his name is Ivan Volk.
Mm-hmm.
He is, the books are written in first person, and page one, chapter one of the first book, he is being shaken awake
Mm-hmm.
um, from a state of unconsciousness.
Oh.
And when he wakes up, he has this bump on his head. He can't remember who he is. He can't remember his past. He's in handcuffs and he's leaning up against a police car, and they're shouting at him that they need to release him. He needs to get in the fight or they're all going to die.
Hmm.
So the story, our main character, Ivan, is trying to figure out who he is.
Mm-hmm.
The person that's shaking him awake was the arresting officer,
Mm-hmm.
one of the primary characters of that book, Special Agent Amber McKnight. And she has one perspective on who he is, but it doesn't jive with who he feels like he is.
Okay.
And they're trying to figure out where they are, how they got there, and what they're supposed to do. And they're being pursued. And I won't give away too much of the story, but
Mm-hmm.
as we're fleeing our pursuers, we're encountering various individuals. And I do chapters in there where it's like we ask this person, hey, tell us your story. And so you
Okay.
have like a little mini story inside the story about how this person ended up in Twin Earth.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's where the history component comes in because I've taken actual historic events
Okay.
and just put obviously a slight fictional twist on it so that it ends up with them being pulled into this Twin Earth land. And so that's pretty much the first book. They're looking
Mm-hmm.
for a safe place where they can be. In book two, it takes place in The Wayward King. It takes place about 2 years after the first book.
Okay.
In the first book, Ivan has found a king to align himself with. And in book two, it starts out that this king and another king were trying to have a peace treaty,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the kings suddenly went insane and the other one disappeared.
Ooh.
And so Ivan has been sent to investigate what has happened. So a little bit of a mystery, right? Which I love
Mm-hmm.
a mystery. Um, And the second book takes place a lot at sea. He's traveling
Mm.
to other islands and countries as he's following leads um,
Mhm.
that will help him find his king. And he returns to a bad situation. And that's all I will say.
And then you're working on book 3. So how
Yes.
far have we gotten on book 3? When do you predict that that will be out?
Uh, well, having just moved last summer, it kind of blew a hole in my writing time. So I'm a little bit farther behind schedule than I wanted to be, but certainly um, within the next year, I think
Okay.
we should be done. I've settled back into the story now and
Mhm.
kind of feverishly pecking away at the keyboard.
Mhm.
So I'm hoping in the next year.
So are you a plotter? Do you have an outline for all of this, or are you more of a pantser and just write as it comes to you?
I write as it comes to me. Um, I do a lot of, well, in the wintertime, I'm on a stationary bike, but I do a lot of cycling.
Mhm.
And that's one of my think times. And I
Oh.
just, when I'm exercising, I'm thinking about my story. And then it's like, okay, now we got to get to the keyboard. And so, yeah, the story kind of evolves as we go. I have a general idea
Mhm.
where we're headed and what we're trying to accomplish, book
Mhm.
book by book. Um, but it's more fun to let the story kind of write itself
Mhm.
for me.
So how many books in this series do you think you're going to end up with?
Um, unless I have a great idea for another series or even a solo book,
Mhm.
uh, as many as I can write until I can no longer write.
Awesome. So un so the number of books is a huge question mark.
Yes, it's undetermined at this point.
So you said that you took the writing hiatus from because you moved.
Yes.
Um, how did you find getting back into writing? Was that an easy transition once you finally got settled, or has that been a challenge?
Pretty much, actually, because when you're moving, you've got long drives to get from point A to point B. When you're slinging boxes around the house, that doesn't always necessarily take a lot of intellect. So
Mhm.
my mind was pretty much working the story. Uh,
Okay.
if anything, I would say it was impatience on my part to get beyond all the projects and everything so
Mhm.
I could get back into the story.
So how do you spend your time outside of writing?
Well, I have three dogs, and actually, you'll find there's an interesting component in my story. Uh, Ivan develops this ability to communicate with animals.
Oh.
I won't explain how, but
Mhm.
it's kind of the way I wish my life was. We have three large rescue dogs. Some of them are special needs,
Mhm.
so they take a lot of attention. I train in martial arts, which comes out in my books. My fight scenes are based on things that I actually practice.
Oh,
So
okay.
um, I make sure that they work and that I can describe them.
Mm.
But besides martial arts, I like to read. I love watching sports on
Mm.
TV and hanging out with the dogs. And when you have three big dogs, that's a lot of dog walks.
I would imagine. What breeds are they?
So the one we've had the longest, she is a pity breed.
Okay.
She's about 72 pounds of pit bull muscle
Okay.
and a head as hard as a brick. Um, Sweet girl, loving girl. Um, our hardest luck case is a German Shepherd. She was a breeder in a puppy mill, and when she came to us,
Mm.
she was 15 pounds underweight. You could see her hip bones, and
Oof.
she was malnourished, overbred, and had clearly been physically abused.
Mm.
Um, but she's a purebred German Shepherd. She's a beautiful dog. In 2 years, she's come so far in becoming a dog. She didn't even know how to be a dog when we first got her.
Mm.
And then our latest one, we've had him for a little over a year. He was supposed to be a black lab, but
Okay.
when he arrived from the Texas shelter, it was determined that he was actually listed as a Great Dane. Now,
Oh,
the vet,
slight difference.
yeah, quite different. Um, he's small for a Great Dane. He's
Okay.
big for a lab.
Ah.
The vet thinks, without having a genetic test done, the
Mm-hmm.
vet's perspective is that he is American Great Dane lab mix.
Oh, okay.
But he's a big boy with a big
Yeah.
bark. We snagged him out of a kill shelter in Texas.
Oh, okay. So, any more dogs on the horizon, or are you capping at three?
Well, that's a continuous conversation between my wife and I because you've heard the joke, if I won the lottery, there'd be signs, and that
Yeah.
would be that there'd be 12 dogs in the house. Um, my wife feels like three is enough.
Okay.
I keep pushing for that fourth one. Uh, we'll see what happens down the road, but we've learned over the last 30 years that having multiple dogs helps when one has to be put to sleep.
Yeah.
It helps us and it helps the other dogs because they're not alone. So there's
Mm,
a
that's true.
it helps in the dog's grieving process, and it
Mm-hmm.
certainly helps in ours.
Guess I never thought about that part of it.
Yeah, dogs definitely grieve when a member of the pack is no longer present.
Hmm, that makes sense
Yeah,
because they're very social animals.
yeah,
So,
they're pack animals, and so
yeah.
they when something's amiss in the pack, they react to it.
Hmm. So, glancing over here at your bio, you had been in corporate world. What did you do in the corporate world?
So I was a corporate security manager.
Mm.
Um, I worked a lot of years for a contract security company, which no longer exists. They got bought out, and then they got bought out again. But I was gone before about 2 years before they got bought out. But I was moved around a bit from Pfizer in Ann Arbor to Pfizer in Kalamazoo. Um, I was at Harley Davidson in Milwaukee, which is actually
Mm.
what took me to Milwaukee was job transfer. Um, and I then spent the last part of my corporate career at Northwestern Mutual,
Mm-hmm.
managing security at one of their facilities.
And then it was just time for retirement. And
No, not so. It wasn't necessarily time for retirement because that was 10 years ago, so I
hmm.
wasn't of retirement age. I was actually having some health issues,
Oh, okay.
and the stresses of the corporate job were complicating those things.
Okay.
Linda, my wife, was trying to get her business started. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we were in a position financially for me to be able to step away from that job and help her launch her business. And I was teaching martial arts, and we had a few small income streams above and beyond her business.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you mentioned the martial arts and you used to teach. Now that you're moved, Are you going to start teaching again?
I'm not sure yet whether I'm just going to do private students here
Okay.
um, or whether I'm going to go join a school and just be a student.
Mhm.
I haven't figured that one out yet. I train on my own a lot,
Okay.
several times a week still, just to kind of stay where I want to be with it. But not sure what the future holds as far as that goes.
Well, it certainly brings itself into your writing.
Hmm.
What got you started writing?
Uh, we've been married for about 35 years
Mhm.
and a little over 35 years. And I would say for 34 of those 35 years, my wife has been saying, you know, you have a book in you. You just need to write it. It was a very difficult thing to do with a corporate job because everything there was very analytical.
Mhm.
Um, and it was hard to find that imaginative, creative flow and stay in that place
Mhm.
where I could go the long distance to write a book.
Mm.
In 2019, suffered a bit of a head injury that led to brain surgery. And during my downtime, Linda's like, you know, this would be a great time to start your book. And I did have an idea that I'd been kicking around prior to
Mhm.
that. And so that's when we started writing the Axe and Helms is when I was recovering from that situation.
Awesome. So, in your bio, you mentioned that you're raised by a children's librarian.
Yes, my mom was a children's librarian for 36 years, starting when I was in about fourth grade. So I was raised around books. I was raised
Mhm.
in the library. My father, interestingly enough, was very much into history.
Ah.
So that probably is the strong connections. Um, my best friend growing up, his brother was really into science fiction and actually became a science fiction writer.
Hmm.
Um, Alexander Yabloko is his name. Um, but I used to borrow books from him because he
Mhm.
had just tons of science fiction books. And so mom got me reading, dad had me in history, and the kid across the street had me in science fiction. So it all kind of came together here later in my life.
So, what are you currently reading?
Currently, I'm reading. I can't actually even remember the title of it. It's a Kindle book.
Ah.
Um, it's a fantasy novel. I'm not sure I'm enjoying it that much, but
Okay.
I have a hard time not finishing books. So
Ah.
I'll
Okay.
I'll gut it out to the end. And I'm not sure what's next on the flight deck. So
So, do you prefer Kindle or do you prefer paper?
uh, my answer to that is yes. There's, having grown up in the library, there's nothing like having a physical book in your hands.
Mhm.
As I get older, eyes are not quite what they used to be. And so sometimes, because you can adjust the font size in a Kindle
Mhm.
and not in a book, um, sometimes, if I'm tired or whatever, it's easier
Mhm.
to just read the Kindle. But I still do enjoy taking a book with me.
Well, we are going to have 53 authors. We've got about 46 genres that are represented and around 280 book titles for
Wow.
June. So, you'll have a great variety to find your next your
There
next
you go.
read.
Yes.
Customers are encouraged to bring their wagon to carry all the books because there'll be so many. But this has
Awesome.
been great to get to know you, and I can't wait to see you at the end of June.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to it.
Thanks, and see you in June.
Thanks for your time.